The hum of the engine resonated through the metallic walls of the warship, the Elysium, as Seraphina Aldrich stared at the viewport. Outside, the cold, infinite expanse of space stretched in all directions, dotted with the scattered remnants of once thriving colonies. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, a reflexive habit that betrayed the pressure weighing down on her. The silence in the cockpit was broken by a sharp voice through her comms. "Commander, we've received a transmission from the front lines," Lieutenant Torek said. His voice was tight, not from fear, but from the weight of the situation. "Gorrath fleet is advancing faster than anticipated. The stronghold is under siege." Seraphina's heart tightened. The last human bastion, Earth's last hope. The Resistance had held that line for weeks, but their supplies were dwindling. Allies were scattered, and every lost battle pushed them closer to extinction. She didn't need to be told what was at stake. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," Seraphina ordered, her voice calm, betraying none of the fury she felt surging within her. "Tell the crew to brace themselves. We're going in." Torek's voice crackled, though a tone of uncertainty undercut his words. "Understood, Commander. But the intel from the ground? It's worse than we thought. They've breached the outer perimeter." Seraphina's jaw tightened. She hadn't come this far only to watch humanity crumble beneath the weight of the Gorrath Empire. Her team, her family, had fought through endless battles together. Now Earth's survival hung by a thread. "Nothing changes," she replied sharply. "We fight. We always fight." She hit the comms button again, this time calling for her command officers. "All hands, this is Commander Aldrich. We are initiating the assault on the Gorrath stronghold. This is our final chance to stop them. Prepare for immediate launch. We fight to win." As she left the cockpit and entered the bustling command center, the reality of what they were about to face hit her full force. The crew moved with purpose, their faces set in grim determination. Her eyes scanned the screens. In the corner, an alert flashed: enemy fleet approaching. Time to impact, 20 minutes, ****. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Rowe, approached her. His face was pale, and the glint of fear in his eyes betrayed his calm demeanor. "Commander, the Gorrath forces, they're moving faster than expected. The initial attack from our scouts was a diversion. They've deployed an entire legion of mind-controlled soldiers." Seraphina didn't need to hear more. The Gorrath were ruthless. They had advanced biotechnology, using living organisms as weapons. They manipulated both the mind and body, creating terrifying soldiers without free will. The mind control technology, a horrific fusion of alien biology and dark science, was a game changer. "We'll need to make quick work of them before they overrun our position," Seraphina muttered, her mind racing with tactics. "Prepare a diversion of our own. I want their command ship vulnerable." Rose's eyes flickered to the holographic map of the battlefield displayed before them. "Their command ship is heavily shielded, but there's a weak spot in their defense grid. If we can exploit it..." Seraphina held up her hand. "We don't have time for ifs, Lieutenant. We'll hit them hard, fast, and relentless." Rowe nodded. "Understood, Commander. I'll relay your orders." Her team worked quickly. The plan was simple: break through the Gorrath defenses, destroy their command ship, and cripple their ability to coordinate the invasion. They couldn't afford another failure, not after everything Earth had already lost. Minutes later, the warship Elysium lurched forward, its engines firing as the fleet surged toward the Gorrath stronghold. The distant stars seemed to blur as they accelerated, closing the gap with terrifying speed. A voice crackled over the comms. "Enemy fleet incoming. Evasive maneuvers engaged." The ship rocked violently as enemy fire lashed out at the fleet. Explosions lit the void outside as ships, both human and alien, clashed in a deadly dance. Seraphina stood firm, unshaken. This wasn't her first battle, nor would it be her last. But today felt different. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Focus on their command ship," she shouted, the words barely cutting through the chaos. "We go straight for the heart." Her orders were clear. As the Elysium's main guns fired, obliterating a smaller alien ship in a brilliant flash of light, Seraphina's mind never strayed from the goal. The fleet had to punch through the Gorrath's line and disable their command ship. "Ready to board," Ro reported through the comms, his voice steady. "Boarding teams are standing by, Commander." Seraphina's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment. "We board at their weakest point," she ordered. "Strike fast, strike hard. We don't give them a second to breathe." The Elysium shuddered again as a massive alien warship collided with its flank, sending waves of static through the comms. Lights flickered, and the hum of the engine faltered. "Commander, shields at 40%. Hull integrity compromised," Torix shouted. "Evasive maneuvers. Move us closer to the flagship," Seraphina ordered. She had to push through the pain of their battered fleet. There was no turning back. Suddenly, a chilling voice filled the comms, its low growl seeping into every corner of the ship's speakers. "Commander Aldrich, your resistance ends here." Seraphina's spine stiffened. It was Lord Vargoth, the Gorrath warlord, their nemesis. He had been relentless in his conquest of the galaxy, and now, he'd come for humanity's final stand. "We'll see about that," Seraphina said, her voice a quiet promise. She didn't have time to dwell on his threats. The fight was far from over. "Engage the main guns, fire at will!" The Elysium surged forward, a massive wave of energy crashing through the void. But as it did, something unexpected happened. The comms buzzed with static, and a warning signal flashed. "Betrayal!" Torix's voice cracked. "The backup fleet, it's turning against us." The ground beneath Seraphina's feet seemed to disappear. She had prepared for many things, but this was something else entirely. The backup fleet, part of the remaining human resistance, was now turning their weapons on her. Her breath caught in her throat. "Brace for impact," she muttered under her breath, as a cold realization settled over her. The betrayal had already begun. Seraphina's hands gripped the cold metal of the command console, every pulse of the Elysium's trembling hull sending a jolt of tension through her body. The betrayal was real. The backup fleet had switched sides, firing on them with deadly precision. Human ships were once again the enemy. She could feel the betrayal as if it were a tangible force, a knot twisting in her chest. "Commander, shields are failing. Hull integrity at 30%. Torix's voice screamed through the comms, each word edged with panic. "Maintain course," Seraphina snapped, her voice sharp and unwavering despite the chaos. "We're not backing down." Her mind raced, quickly calculating their options. The Gorrath had dealt a devastating blow to the human fleet, but now, this new threat, humans themselves, was the real challenge. She knew the backup fleet wasn't entirely loyal, but this level of betrayal, in the heart of the fight, was something she had not anticipated. A voice crackled in her ear. "Lieutenant Rowe." "Commander, we've lost contact with the Archangel fleet. It's either been compromised or—" "Don't finish that thought," Seraphina interrupted, her words cold and focused. "We'll deal with them when we can." The Elysium shook violently as an explosion rocked the starboard side. Sparks flew from the console, and the air smelled of burnt metal. The bridge crew scrambled, trying to keep the ship together, but Seraphina knew time was running out. "Prepare to board," she ordered, her tone decisive. The plan had changed. "We're going straight to the heart of their fleet, whether they're with us or against us." The bridge went silent for a heartbeat, then the sounds of frantic commands echoed across the comms. The enemy fleet was still on their tail, but Seraphina had no intention of running. If they couldn't break the human lines, they would go through them. With a sharp lurch, the Elysium angled toward the enemy flagship, the ship's vast guns lighting up as they exchanged fire with a much larger vessel. Seraphina's gaze remained locked on the viewport as the human ships ahead of them burned bright, slipping into the dark void like dying stars. "We're closing on the flagship," Rowe reported, his voice strained but steady. "But we've got heavy resistance up ahead." Seraphina clenched her fists. They were fighting not only for their survival but to stop the Gorrath from enslaving what remained of the galaxy. Every second mattered, and every moment lost could mean the fall of the human race. Cut through the resistance. Full speed ahead, she commanded, her voice steely. Prepare the boarding teams. I want them in the hangars and ready to move the second we breach their ship. Torek glanced up, concern flashing in his eyes. Commander, if we make it on board, we'll be exposed. We're already down to 40% of our operational crew. Do you really think we can do this? Seraphina didn't hesitate. She didn't have the luxury of doubt. We don't have a choice. Either we take the flagship and cripple the Gorrath, or we die here with no hope left. She turned back to the viewport, watching as the flagship loomed closer, its massive silhouette dwarfing their ship. Her stomach twisted, but her resolve remained firm. They were about to step into the lion's den, but they would do it with their heads held high. The first volley of fire hit their shields, a jolt so powerful that the ship shuddered beneath them. The impact knocked Torek to the ground, and sparks rained down from the overhead panels. We're losing power to the weapons array, Torek called out, scrambling back to his station. Focus! Seraphina barked, moving with calm precision despite the rising panic. We can't afford to lose another minute. A voice crackled through the comms again, this time a guttural growl. Seraphina Aldrich. Lord Vargatha's voice echoed across the ship. You fight a losing battle. Come to me. Join us. The galaxy will be brought to order. She gritted her teeth, the words slicing through her. The offer was a lie, a manipulation designed to break her spirit. No deal, Vargath. You'll never break me. Then your death will be quick, Commander. His voice was cold, final. Seraphina's fingers danced over the controls, issuing orders for the final stage of their assault. The Elysium surged forward, weaving between incoming fire and debris from the destroyed ships around them. It felt like every inch of space between them and the flagship was being shredded by the enemy's fire. Boarding teams, ready! Rose's voice rang out. We're preparing to breach their hull. We'll be on their deck in under a minute. Do it, Seraphina commanded. All units move out. Once we're inside, disable their systems. The ship lurched violently as they impacted with the enemy's flagship, a booming crash that shook every member of the crew. Emergency lights flashed red, but Seraphina moved with the precision of someone who had fought countless battles before. This wasn't the time for hesitation. Breaching now! Rose's voice was fierce, and the sound of mechanical grinds filled the air as the docking bay doors sealed into place. The tension in the bridge was palpable. Seraphina grabbed her weapon and motioned for the first wave of her team to follow. They moved swiftly, their footfalls silent as they exited the ship's belly and into the heart of the enemy vessel. The corridors were quiet, too quiet, and Seraphina's instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Ahead, the hum of alien machinery echoed, and the air grew colder, more oppressive. The mind-controlled soldiers were close. She could feel their presence, like a shadow stalking them through the dark. They rounded a corner, and the first of the Gorrath soldiers appeared, their eyes glazed and empty. The humans were no longer humans, just shells of what they once were. The firefight was brutal, the sharp crack of gunfire reverberating down the hall as Seraphina and her team fought tooth and nail for every inch. Each soldier they dropped felt like a small victory, but the numbers didn't seem to be in their favor. Commander, the systems are heavily fortified, Rose shouted, reloading his weapon. We're not going to take their command center without reinforcements. Seraphina's eyes narrowed. We don't wait for reinforcements. We move now, or we lose everything. As they reached the heart of the flagship, a sudden explosion rocked the corridor, and debris rained down, cutting off their escape route. The team was surrounded. Seraphina's mind raced. They were trapped. The Gorrath had anticipated their move. Fall back to the last position, she barked, pushing forward despite the overwhelming odds. But even as they fought to retreat, one final, haunting thought lingered in Seraphina's mind. Who among them had betrayed them first? The stench of burning metal and the sharp tang of ozone filled the air as Seraphina's team retreated into the narrow corridors of the Gorrath flagship. The explosion had shattered their forward momentum, scattering debris and severing the path to the command center. They were trapped, cornered by the very enemy they had hoped to defeat. "Status report," Seraphina demanded, her voice low and urgent. Lieutenant Rowe, bleeding from a gash on his arm, staggered over to her. "We've lost contact with the Elysium. The outer docking bays sealed off. We're cut off from any escape route." Her heart pounded, but she didn't let it show. They could still win this. If she could just get to the command center, disable the flagship's systems, they could cripple the Gorrath's entire fleet. The fate of humanity rested on this single, brutal push. Seraphina's eyes narrowed. "We push through. We take that command center. Now." Torek, his face pale and drawn, spoke up, his voice quivering. "Commander, we don't even know how many soldiers are waiting for us in the next section. We're outnumbered, and we've got no backup." "We don't need backup," she snapped. "We've made it this far. The only way out is through." She grabbed a rifle from one of her fallen soldiers and handed it to Rowe. "Get your team ready. We break through, and we make it count." She turned toward the wreckage blocking their path. The corridors were a maze, designed to confuse and trap invaders, but Seraphina had faced worse odds before. With a steady hand, she moved toward the blast doors that had sealed them in. The tension in the air was palpable, the silence only broken by the occasional hum of alien machinery. Their time was running out. Every second spent hiding in the shadows was one more moment the Gorrath could prepare. They couldn't afford to wait. A sharp, low rumble echoed from deep within the ship. It wasn't an explosion this time, something worse. Seraphina's gut clenched. It was the sound of the ship's engines shifting into hyperdrive. They were moving. The Gorrath flagship was preparing to leave the system. "We don't have long," Seraphina muttered, moving quickly to the control panel of the blast door. It was heavily fortified, locked tight by the Gorrath's security systems. A hacking device was required, and the team had none. Not that it mattered, Seraphina had learned to improvise long ago. "Move!" she ordered, kicking the panel. It sparked, and with a final, violent jolt, the door swung open. The corridor on the other side was empty, eerily quiet. Seraphina nodded to her team, and they pushed forward, moving like shadows, weapons raised. She signaled for the assault team to take point. They had a single objective: reach the command center and dismantle the Gorrath's central control. As they moved deeper into the heart of the flagship, Seraphina's mind raced. The Gorrath warlord, Lord Vargoth, was watching, listening, waiting for their next move. She could feel his presence like a cold shadow stalking them, a pressure that threatened to crush them at any moment. They reached the intersection where the final stretch to the command center began. There was no turning back now. A sudden burst of energy flared, and the walls around them began to tremble. Seraphina's eyes widened as she realized the Gorrath had activated their emergency defenses. Explosions erupted from the walls, sending shards of alien metal flying in every direction. The team ducked for cover, but Seraphina was already moving, shouting orders. "Get to the central core! Disable their communications, their engines, everything!" The team fought through the barrage of attacks, returning fire as they advanced. Each step felt like a victory, but Seraphina knew better than to celebrate too soon. The real battle was ahead, in the heart of the command center. They reached the massive steel doors of the control room, where the true battle awaited. The door was protected by a thick energy shield, pulsing with a steady blue light. Seraphina could feel the weight of the moment. The Gorrath had placed everything into protecting their central systems. If they couldn't breach this shield, the entire mission would be for nothing. "We need to get through that shield," Rose said, his voice tight. Seraphina's eyes flickered to the control panel beside the door. There were no easy solutions. "Get your charges ready." Rowe hesitated. "Commander, if we blow this, the whole ship could go down. We won't make it out." Seraphina's eyes hardened. "We won't make it out if we don't." Rose set the charges without another word, and the team moved back as the timer counted down. The blast shook the corridor, sending vibrations through the floor. The door split open with a deafening crash, and Seraphina led the charge. Inside, the command center was a high-tech nerve center, filled with alien consoles and vast screens flashing with incomprehensible data. At the far end of the room, Lord Vargoth stood, flanked by a dozen elite Gorrath soldiers. His cold, calculating eyes met Seraphina's, and a twisted smile curled on his lips. "I knew you would come, Seraphina Aldrich," Vargoth said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "But it is too late. The galaxy will be mine, and you will die here, just like the rest." Seraphina's fingers tightened around her weapon. "Not today, Vargoth." A fierce gunfight erupted, the air crackling with energy as bullets tore through the air. The Gorrath soldiers advanced, but Seraphina and her team were faster. Each shot, each movement, was precise. Ro covered the left flank while Torek and Seraphina pushed forward. Vargoth watched impassively, his soldiers falling one by one. He moved with unnatural grace, his every motion deliberate, as though this had all been expected. "You are strong, Seraphina," Vargoth said, stepping forward as his final soldier was cut down. "But even the strongest will fall." The ground beneath them shook as the ship's engines began to power up. They were running out of time. With a cry of fury, Seraphina lunged at Vargoth, her weapon raised. He blocked her strike with ease, his hand moving like lightning to disarm her. They grappled, their bodies locked in a fierce struggle. "You cannot stop the inevitable," Vargoth sneered. "Watch me." Seraphina grunted, using all her strength to twist free and slam a pulse grenade into his chest. The explosion was deafening. The blast threw them both to the ground, debris raining down. When the dust settled, Vargoth was nowhere to be seen. The flagship trembled, and the ship's systems began to fail. Seraphina could feel the Gorratha's controls slipping away. "We've won," Ro gasped, standing shakily. But Seraphina's eyes were cold, calculating. "No. The war isn't over. It's only just begun." The Gorrath had fallen, but the galaxy was still a vast, dangerous place. And Seraphina knew that the fight for humanity's survival was far from finished. The silence of the command center was deafening. The firestorm of gunfire and explosions had given way to an eerie calm, broken only by the distant hum of failing systems. Seraphina stood in the heart of the wreckage, her breath heavy, her body aching from the brutal assault. The Gorrath flagship, once a symbol of their empire's dominance, now lay in ruins, but so much had been lost in the process. The holographic display flickered, showing the faint outline of the Elysium and the remains of the fleet. Seraphina could hardly look at it, so many ships, so many lives gone. They had won, yes, but the cost of that victory was immeasurable. "Commander, the fleet is retreating. The remaining Gorrath ships are pulling back into deep space," Ro reported, his voice tinged with exhaustion. His uniform was tattered, and blood stained his shirt, but he stood tall, unwilling to show any weakness. Seraphina didn't reply immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the screen, watching as the last of the alien forces scattered. The war had turned. Humanity had struck a blow to the heart of the Gorrath Empire, but the repercussions of that victory were only just beginning to sink in. The future, whatever it would be, felt impossibly uncertain. Torek approached, his eyes haunted. "Commander, we've lost nearly half of our fleet. So many good people." Seraphina's chest tightened at the weight of his words. "I know. They gave everything." There was a long pause, filled only by the hum of failing systems. Seraphina's mind wandered back to the fight, Vargoth's cruel, calculating gaze, the final blow she had delivered to him. The warlord was dead, but his empire would leave scars on the galaxy that might never heal. And humanity had changed. "Commander." Torek's voice broke through her thoughts, raw with emotion. "What now? The Gorrath are gone, but there are others out there. The galaxy is in ruins." She turned to face him. His eyes were wide with fear, uncertainty. He wasn't asking for a plan. He was asking if there was any hope left. Seraphina hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know. She had led them through battles, through betrayals, through impossible odds. But this was different. The war had cost them everything, and humanity's future was a fractured, fragile thing now. Now we rebuild, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We rebuild, and we prepare for what comes next. She looked around at the faces of her team, Ro, Torek, the survivors. Each of them had lost something in the fight. They were not the same people they had been when they first stepped onto the battlefield, when they had believed they could win with honor and justice. No. Now they were soldiers of survival. The rules had changed. And Seraphina, she was changed too. The Gorrath won't be the last threat we face, Seraphina continued, her tone resolute. But we've proven something. Humanity can survive. We will survive. Ro nodded, though the doubt in his eyes remained. But what if we're not ready for what's next? What if? We will be ready, she interrupted, meeting his gaze. We'll learn. We'll adapt. Humanity doesn't surrender. Not now. Not ever. As she spoke, the weight of the responsibility settled back onto her shoulders. She had become their leader because she had believed in humanity's strength, but now, in the aftermath, she felt the weight of that belief more acutely than ever before. A low beep sounded from the console, and Seraphina turned toward it. A new transmission was coming through, faint, fragmented. It was a communication from one of the last remaining human outposts, somewhere deep in the galaxy, beyond the reach of the Gorrath forces. She stepped forward, accepting the signal. The screen flickered, then stabilized, revealing a weary-looking officer. His face was grim. Commander Aldrich? The officer's voice crackled over the comms. We've received word. The Gorrath's allies are rallying. And there's something else, something more insidious. There are whispers of new factions, powerful, unknown entities, moving across the galaxy. Seraphina's pulse quickened, her heart sinking. Of course. As the Gorrath fell, others would rise. The void left behind would never be empty for long. We've seen the first signs of this new threat, the officer continued, his voice low, almost fearful. And the worst part? They're not like anything we've fought before. Seraphina's gaze hardened. What are we dealing with? The officer's face grew darker. We don't know yet. But we're organizing a coalition to deal with it. We need you, Commander. The people need you. The galaxy needs you. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving Seraphina staring at the empty screen. The room was still, the weight of his words pressing down on her. Another war. Another threat. She had just survived one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history, and now it seemed that peace, if it could ever be called that, was a fleeting illusion. We've won a battle, Seraphina said, her voice hardening. But the war isn't over. Torek took a breath. Then we'll fight again. We'll fight until the end. Seraphina turned to face him, her eyes fierce. We won't stop fighting. Not until humanity has a future. Not until this galaxy belongs to us again. As the crew gathered, the weight of what lay ahead was clear. But they had made it this far, through betrayal, loss, and sacrifice. They would rise again, no matter the cost. Outside the shattered remnants of the Gorrath flagship, the stars gleamed cold and indifferent, a reminder that the universe was vast, and full of dangers far beyond their comprehension. But Seraphina Aldrich knew one thing for sure. Humanity had survived the darkest of times. And as long as there was breath in her body, she would make sure they would never be enslaved again. The battle had been won. The cost had been great, but the war was far from over. And Seraphina would lead them into whatever came next.